All right, everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich. I'm not here with my partner, Sean Williams, who is playing hooky tonight. I'm here instead with Bob Rose. He is with the Bayou Blitz. He with Illustrated. He is with kids. He is with quarantine. He is with everything right now. How you doing tonight, Bob?
Alan, I'm real good, and my sanity is hanging in there. I'm actually flourishing during quarantine because I'm not a people person anyway. Yeah, so you put me
Wait.
in.
Don't you work retail? And
Yes,
you're not a people person?
yeah, you are absolutely right. I work retail, but no, we're all doing well up here. Everybody, knock on wood, has stayed healthy and relatively happy so far. I hope you, your family, and all of our listeners and viewers out there are doing the same.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we just had our first quarantine college graduation this past weekend. My middle child graduated college in 4 years, so she beat both her mother and I did the 5 year plan, and her mother did the 5.5 year plan. So I got to give it to her. She buckled down and did what she was supposed to do. I was having too much fun. I'm not going to lie. That's just how it is. But it was a unique experience. It's on YouTube, the UL college graduation program. And basically, they had somebody read off names, and the kids all put little videos of them saying something. So it was nice. It really was. We had a nice little thing. We kind of did a Zoom thing with our family that's across the country, and my dad did social distancing, came over, so everything was good. It was good.
Well, good, and congratulations to her. I did see it on you guys' Facebook postings,
Mhm.
and just didn't get a chance to reply. But it's off to the real world now, young lady. Whenever the real world decides to resume, but
That's
congratulations,
it.
you've done a spectacular job so far.
That's it. And then that's the biggest thing. The real world's on hold right now. So until that gets started, her life is kind of in limbo. So, but that's okay. She's going to
Mhm.
get to go to the beach. They're opening the beaches up. She's going to get to go to Gulf Shores with her roommates. They've been together for 2 years. They're going to stay in a condo for a week, kind of a last goodbye before they all go their separate ways. And hell, I still am friends with my college friends, my high school friends too, my college friends that we did so much together. It's been 30 plus years. So all the best. Hey, since the last time we were on, we the Saints, have done very little in the off season because so much is on hold. Um, Let me ask you, they signed Ty Montgomery, late of the Jets. He came from the Ravens originally. His biggest success, obviously, with the Packers. He's a running back slash receiver or receiver slash running back. Number one, do you think, A, he has something to offer the Saints? And B, if he makes the roster, where do you see him fitting in?
Uh, I think that Ty Montgomery has a real chance to make the roster, but yeah, there's a couple things that have to happen for him to do that. In addition to him just playing well, he's going to need a little bit of luck to go his way too, as far as the other roster spots. But I
Mm-hmm.
do think that he has the talent to contribute mightily to this offense. He has the versatility that Sean Payton and Pete Carmichael absolutely love. And you hit the description on him of him right on the head: running back slash wide receiver slash running back slash receiver. Uh, he had the bulk of his success earlier in his career as a running back with the Packers, but they had to move him to running back after some injuries at the position.
Mm-hmm.
As far as his style at running back, he has a rather upright style, but he does have nifty feet and can identify the holes pretty well. So I do like his vision as a running back, but I think that his main value to the Saints offense is going to be more of a pass catcher. And I really like his receiving abilities, whether it's coming out of the backfield, split out wide, or even out of the slot, or maybe perhaps even as an H-back motion type of role. He can run nearly a full route tree. His hands are excellent. He has good concentration in traffic. So I think that that's where his value is going to be, and perhaps what could happen if he makes a roster spot, he could take it away from one of those younger wide receivers, one of the undrafted rookies this year, or second year undraftees from last year. As far as his use as a running back, obviously he's not really going to take away any touches from Alvin Kamara. He's going to take away very few touches from Latavius Murray, I think, which means Dwayne Washington, the running back Dwayne Washington, compared to the running back of Ty Montgomery. I actually prefer Montgomery. What's helped Washington stick around so much over the last 2 years, even though one could make a case that other running backs has outperformed Dwayne Washington in preseason, is the fact that Washington is one of the team's best special teamers, and that has been very important to the Saints over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Mm-hmm. So for Ty to have a shot, not only is he going to have, because he's not much of a special teamer, at least that's not been his pedigree coming up to now. So Ty is going to have to not only play well as a runner / receiver / runner / receiver, but the Saints are going to need, and Montgomery is going to need, somebody else from another position to shine as a special teamer and make the Saints coaches say, okay, we can afford now to keep a Ty Montgomery over Dwayne Washington, because we're not going to lose anything in special teams because player X or player Y is going to step into that slot.
How much of a threat do you think he is? I know you said you don't really see it, but how much of a threat do you think he is to, say, Latavius Murray for playing time? Because Montgomery, I just looked it up, he's 6 foot 216. So he's built pretty solidly. Mm-hmm. And the Packers did use him as an inside runner as well as a receiver. So you've got a back of his size that can line up as a receiver, but also can play running back. Do you think that maybe that kind of fits what Peyton likes as a running back more so than Murray?
It certainly would fit what Peyton prefers to do with his running backs, but even though Montgomery was used as an between the tackles runner with Green Bay, I would still give Latavius Murray the edge in that particular category. And it was a role that we didn't see Murray used enough in last year, except for when Alvin Kamara was injured. But as a result, the Saints did struggle, in my opinion, down the stretch in short yardage and some goal line situations. One reason was because I don't think they utilized Murray enough. And another reason was some of the struggles on the interior offensive line, especially those 2 guard positions, as you know. Montgomery would be given a chance because, like you said, he's a big boy. He is strong, and as far as him being an upright runner, well, so is Latavius Murray. If you look at the film, I just think that Murray has a little bit more pop behind his pads than what Ty Montgomery does. But Ty will certainly be given the chance to unseat him, and we've definitely seen bigger upsets as far as one player overtaking another in the depth chart in the Sean Payton era than we would here.
Exactly. So. Okay, so you kind of steered me into the part of the conversation. We saw them release Larry Warford. Some teams showed some initial interest in him, but he's still a free agent. So the Saints decided his $12 million wasn't worth it. So I've got 2 questions for you. Number one, we haven't talked about the draft yet, but where do you see Cesar Ruiz and Eric McCoy kind of playing out now that Warford's gone? And secondly, give us your evaluation of Larry Warford from last season and why the Saints probably let him go.
As far as they drafted Ruiz to start. And Peyton said that immediately after the draft. Look, he didn't use those words per se, but he did say, "Look, we drafted Cesar to play sooner rather than later." And I think everybody knew that the writing was on the wall for Larry Warford immediately after that pick was made. So obviously McCoy is gonna take one spot, Ruiz is gonna take the other as far as center right guards go. It's certainly going to be a matter of wild speculation as far as which player fills which role. I expect they'll both be given opportunities, and Peyton's going to mix match his line combinations right there. As far as style of play goes, and plus the fact that McCoy is coming into his second year, he grasped the center position so well from an intellectual side last year. So I think that he probably fits the mold of what the team likes out of their guards. He's a little bit bigger physically than what Ruiz is. Not much. I mean, we're splitting hairs. But Ruiz has more mobility than what I think McCoy does. And the Saints have always liked mobile centers. When Max Unger was in his prime, he was as mobile a center there was in the league. And you go back pretty much every single year that the Saints offensive line has had success, it's because of the mobility and the athleticism at their center. So if I had to place a couple dollars as a wager, I would wager that they'll move McCoy to right guard and Ruiz at center. But I think that both players have the versatility to play either position. So we're going to see them flip-flopped.
I agree. I totally agree with all of that. This is going to sound so bad, but I can say this in front of you, not Sean. I just like a center with a big butt. I'm not going to lie. And Ruiz has a big butt. Yeah. And the reason why I've always liked that is because, the low man wins the battle all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's all about your lower body when it comes to, being a great, powerful interior offensive lineman. All your power is going to come from your butt and your legs. And especially a center, for him to, after he snaps that ball, get up under the pads, lift that defensive tackle up off his feet and shove him into the secondary. That's what I like to see. And if you look at the great centers, I mean, that's what you really got with a lot of these great centers. And this is not a knock on McCoy at all. No. I think, I really like him being moved to guard. I think he's going to make an outstanding guard. Because I think he has that mobility. You were talking about that earlier with Ruiz. I think McCoy's got that mobility. Yeah. To get out there on the sweeps, they run a version of traps. There's, they like on the pass play, and you can see it a lot. And this is why I was asking you about give us a thumbnail sketch on Warford and how you think his play declined. If you watch on a lot of pass plays, the guard, in this case, Larry Warford, had to pull out in front of Breeze to pick up the outside looping rushers coming around the left side, and that was his job. Mm-hmm. So, that's the kind of stuff I think that, McCoy is going to really thrive at, because we were trying to use McCoy a lot on screens. So I really like everything about the way this offensive line is coming together. Just that left side's got to stay healthy.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The left side, we're going to keep our fingers crossed, game in and game out, snap in and snap out. But the right side of that offensive line, because of the absence of Warford, now got a whole lot more athletic. And and the Saints, I haven't forgotten about part B to your question. The Saints made the move with Warford for far more than just salary cap reasons. I don't, grant you $12.8 million coming off of the books and freeing up $8.5 million of salary cap is going to be key. But Warford's play declined, not at the point of attack, because he's still as good as there is. He's still, he's still a mauler in the run game. And as far as straight ahead lineman and power goes, Warford is still excellent. It is that mobility factor. Too often we saw him get beat by speed rushers, and that's one of the reasons why the Vikings and then earlier in the season the Falcons had so much success when they moved their edge guys a little bit inside to put pressure on those guards. Pete struggled. Will Clapp struggled when he replaced Pete against Atlanta, and certainly Warford's struggles are well documented. And even though the film definitely shows that, you hit the point that I was trying to make, and my follow up to the Warford release article was that we didn't see the same sort of dynamic nature from the Saints off of the right edge last year that we've seen in the years past. Ramczyk is terrific. So that wasn't the issue. It was that Warford just wasn't getting to the point fast enough to beat his blocker to the spot. Whether it was a run off tackle, a sweep, which we all cringe to see when the Saints run, or a screen pass that this team is so well known for, particularly in the Sean Payton era. Warford's just not whether he's not athletic enough to get out there anymore, or whether it was a question of his weight and not being in the proper shape, which we certainly heard a lot coming out of New Orleans camp. Some mumblings during the year, and then it really hit the fan after the playoff loss. So Ruiz or McCoy, and I agree. I think that McCoy is ultimately going to fit into that right guard spot, and his open field athleticism, McCoy's is just off the charts, outstanding. And Ruiz does have that Weeble shape. He's shaped like a center, like you pointed out. But whichever young man steps into that right guard spot, the Saints just got tenfold more athletic than they were with Larry Warford there. And this offensive line is now younger, more, from tackle to tackle, younger, more athletic, and all of them are under contract for minimum of the next 4 years, counting this year.
Yeah. And that's one other thing I wanted to bring up, because a lot of people, and you saw this with a lot of people questioning the bringing back of Andres Pete. Why bring a guy like him back? And why was Warford let go? And a lot of people, I think, kind of miss the idea that, this offensive line is a zone blocking scheme with an emphasis on speed and quickness. They're not put a man on a man, give me five big fat guys with a lot of upper body strength, lean on defensive linemen. That's not how this team is built. And, I think you see that going back even with when we're talking about Latavius Murray. People saw the Tennessee Titans and what the Titans were doing with Derrick Henry and their offense. That offensive line, that offense is built for power, run people over, very simplistic play passing. It's all designed around, we're going to feed our big back the ball. He's just going to pound you and pound you and pound you and wear your ass out. And, we saw that with Christian Okoye with the Chiefs. We saw that with Earl Campbell and the Houston Oilers. That was Larry Zonka with the Miami Dolphins. That was an offense that the teams like to run. Bum Phillips believed in that when he came to the Saints. That's not how this team is built. This team is built around speed and quickness. So you want an offensive line that emphasizes speed and quickness. Get to that second level. Get out in front. Receivers have to come out and block. For the stretch plays, for the outside plays, getting running backs into space with a short passing game, substituting for a power running game. So it's just a fit. It's not that Larry Warford was crap, which is how some people took it. It's like it was more of he doesn't fit what we like to do on offense any longer.
Exactly. And I saw some of your comments and posts leading up to the draft. You had the same mindset that I did. We both expected the Saints to draft an interior lineman, not necessarily in the first round, but the fact that they made the pick after, and I think it surprised most observers, including myself. But I sat back, and it didn't take me long to see the logic behind it. Especially, you have to realize, just look as recently as their last game. The Saints were absolutely whipped inside by the Vikings. Now, part of that was a bad football game by all five starting linemen. But Warford was absolutely exposed. Pete probably wasn't 100% healthy by that point in time, and McCoy had an atrocious game, maybe his worst game of the season.
Ramczyk had a terrible game, and that's unheard of. But even he had a terrible game on the critical play, to me at least. And I'll keep beating this dog to death. But on a critical play, right after we get all the momentum coming our way, Taysom Hill's literally carrying this offense on his back, and we're about to go to the go-ahead score. The very next play is the sack fumble that Breeze gives up the ball, and the Vikings are able to pretty much run the clock down. I don't think they got any points out of it, but it still took away a scoring opportunity where we could have possibly taken the lead. But yeah, it was exactly that. It was an inside rush on Ramczyk. He missed his block. He got beat to the inside. Warford was on skates. They got underneath his pads and it pushed him back. And Pete pulls out, misses his guy, but McCoy picks him up, rides him to the outside. But by that time, the pressure had, Armstead thought the ball would be gone by now. His guy is getting around him. So, it was all me at the quarterback. It was just a disaster. And that was all 5. So absolutely. Hey, Jerry Poor has a question for you. Today, the news was announced that the Superdome will not have, or Mercedes-Benz will not renew the naming license. So people are having fun with this. What could be the new name of the Superdome? And I've seen everything from Slap Your Mama Dome to Put the Womack on them Superdome. Do you have an idea what you think, who could make the name for the dome? Who would you like to see sponsor the Superdome?
And if I know he has a bunch of kids and they're going to be going to college eventually. But I suspect he saved his money pretty well. I would absolutely love to see Drew Brees involved in the naming of the new Superdome and the sponsorship rights. I realize it's a reach. We live in a corporate world, and it's going to be a corporate sponsor. But Breeze has already done so much for this city, that community, that region, that would just be sort of icing on the cake. And you have seen icons, franchise icons in other sports as well, do that kind of thing, not necessarily stadium, but step in and give their franchise a boost even after retirement. Heck, for all you hockey fans tuning in, the Pittsburgh Penguins are still the Pittsburgh Penguins solely because of Mario Lemieux stepped in and bought the team. So I don't see Drew Brees doing that kind of thing because I think the Benson family is still pretty concrete. But yeah, I would love to see Drew Brees overstep all the corporate bounds and say, we want my name, we want that to be Brees Dome, for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
I'm getting all kinds of names now that you mention it. The Drew Brees Superdome, Telsa's Cyberdome. I'm showing these as they're coming up. Big Shot New Orleans Superdome. I like you when you said Breeze. I immediately thought of Jimmy John's, but he also owns Walk On. So that's 2 places right there. And you go back to the Pete Maravich Assembly Center over there in Baton Rouge for LSU. And clearly that's a because he built the stadium. I can see that with Drew Brees. Buffalo Wild Wings Superdome. My daughter would disagree on that one. That's where she works. But anyway, yeah, I never thought they'd be able to sell the Superdome with the naming right, but the Mercedes-Benz Superdome works so well. I would like to see something like that. I'm worried it's going to be like Allstate with the sponsors of Sugar Bowl. I could see Allstate maybe getting involved in this. I could see, some Entergy who provides all the power in South Louisiana. That's probably who it's going to be. But after he retires, I would not mind seeing the field named Breeze Field because they do that. I mean, you've seen that in other stadiums. So I think Buffalo still calls their field. They still have the field named after the owner. The owner passed away. I think it's still Ralph Wilson Field. So Alan and Danny, we have no money for this, especially Danny. He's still in the young end. I'm getting money now because my kids are all graduating college. He has no money. I have no money.
Well, I was asked on a show earlier today, if jokingly, of course, uh, whether I was going to put in for for the naming rights, and I chuckled and I said, yeah, I said I would throw a few bucks down if it became like an eBay kind of bid, but I would have to bow out pretty quickly if I got to say over $100.
I gotta tell you, Avery posted the Lucky Dog Stadium. It's funny because when I was a kid at playground football, we had our jerseys sponsored, and when we were I'm gonna reveal how old this was. We were the Baltimore Colts, so it was the '70s. We were the Baltimore Colts, and our jerseys. I still have my jersey. Have Lucky Dogs on the back of our jerseys. So yeah, I was number 30 for Lucky Dogs, Baltimore Colts. And that was the only year we actually wore the sponsor's name on the back of the jersey, because they went my first year, we got the hand-me-downs, 9, 10-year-old kids. We get the hand-me-down jerseys everybody's been wearing for 30 years. They're all ratty. Some moms threw it in with bleach and you got stains on them and everything else. So, my last 2 years, we actually got custom jerseys. So I was number 30 when I was with the Baltimore Colts, and I was my last year there because my birthday falls in December. So at 8 years old, I could play with the 9 and 10s because all my friends were 9 and 10. But I was still 10 when the football season was going, even though I was turning 11. So my last year, I was one of the bigger kids, and I got to play 3 years with the 9 and 10s. And that's the year I wore number 42. We were the Miami Dolphins again. I wore number 42 in honor of Chuck Muncie. So, and I was running over people.
In honor of Chuck Muncie.
Oh yeah. Except I wasn't on cocaine. I was on just pure sugar from Kool-Aid and Hawaiian Punch. Yeah, it was that. But that's funny when you said Lucky Dogs. It reminded me of that. Anyway, okay. So we mentioned in passing, we haven't really talked much about the draft either. We talked about Cesar Ruiz. I got to remember it's Ruiz, not Ruiz, like the people I know from South Louisiana. But the other two picks, Braun and the tight end Adam Trautman from Dayton. What do you think of those two picks?
Love both picks. I previewed both players leading up to the draft, trying to nail down, trying to stay specific to positions that I thought that the Saints would address at some point in the draft. And Braun was one of my early previews, and I absolutely love film on him. I had him rated as a potential late first-round pick, and I wasn't the only one, figuring that he would probably slide to somewhere early to mid-second round. So when the Saints had the opportunity to grab him in the third round, I thought that was an absolute steal. Listen, what I love about him, Wisconsin, his Wisconsin film shows a very talented and, a very productive and effective pass rusher. He's not going to be a full-time edge player with New Orleans. They're going to work him into most likely, my guess would be a strong side linebacker role. Mm-hmm. And his rookie season, while he picks up some of the coverages and different nuances of dropping into coverage of the NFL game, they're going to get him on the field as much as possible early on. So you'll see him in some they used to call it the NASCAR package with New Orleans. Mm-hmm. You'll see him used to rush the passer in some obvious passing situations. But if you watch enough of his film at Wisconsin, you realize that he does have the natural ability to be potentially outstanding in coverage. He just wasn't used a lot that way at Wisconsin. He has the athletic ability and the fluid hips and feet to stay with running backs and most athletic tight ends down the field. He has a good natural feel for his zone drops and what's going on around him. He's not stiff and he doesn't get frozen. The thing that I don't like about him coverage-wise is that, and again, this is due to his inexperience being used that way. He could be a little bit shallow or a little bit late in his drops off of the line of scrimmage. He's certainly not the only NFL linebacker that would possess that weakness. And I expect that he'll get quicker and get a better feel for that kind of thing as he's been in the league, for a little while. We even saw that kind of thing with Alex Anzalone. Alex struggled in his zone drops during his rookie year. Bond is a terrific run defender too. I think sooner rather than later, he's going to be an every down player. He has absolutely relentless pursuit, from sideline to sideline, and he will not stop until that whistle is blown. He has a good lateral slide along the line of scrimmage. If he is rushing the passer or is a blitzer, he has a really explosive first step at the snap, and a great burst into the backfield to zero in on a quarterback or a running back. I mean, his tackles for loss production, even outside quarterback sacks at Wisconsin, was absolutely tremendous. And like I said, I was pleasantly surprised when he dropped. But anybody. I did see some people, they came out and said when the Saints made this pick, the Saints got another edge rusher. That's not what this kid is going to be. He goes about 238, 240 pounds. He'll probably bulk up a little bit, but he's not going to be an every down defensive end. Folks, they drafted him to be a linebacker and if he's not a full-time starter by the 2021 season, then that's going to be a disappointment.
I agree with all this. I was stats from the game this past season, Ohio State and Nebraska, because I remember watching this one. The big thing about that game, that's why I really paid attention to Bond, because I wanted to see how he would handle Ohio State, especially the complexity they send out for a college offense. I wanted to see how he would handle with the small running backs. How does he move in space? How does he cover? And he, to me, he did a fine job everywhere. And I agree with you. I thought he was going to be probably a late first round, early second round pick. And the fact that he lasted the third round was incredible. But it just shows you how different teams in the draft value certain players and how they stack their boards. Because I always laugh every year. People start listing players and they go, well, there's no way he's going to be available at 23, or there's no way he's going to be available. And they'll have 25 players listed, but they're going to tell you that none of them will be there at 23. Well, the math doesn't work. Someone's got to slide, but it's just, that's just how the draft falls. So I was really excited to get him. And I agree with you. I think he's going to start out the Sam linebacker, probably eventually replacing Kiko Alonso, and Alonso probably get pushed to the to special teams and rotational player as the season goes on. The key for the linebacker core for me is going to have to be Alex Anzalone. He's staying healthy. I don't feel comfortable with the linebackers. I know what Craig Robertson could do, and I love Robertson, but he's limited athletically, especially his age. But I really don't feel comfortable with the linebackers they have on the roster right now to fill in that middle if Anzalone's history continues and he gets injured. But I think Bond has the upside is just going to be incredible for him.
And I fully expected the Saints to address the linebacker position, at some point within day one or day two. I wasn't one of the ones necessarily that had them penned into taking Kenneth Murray or Patrick Queen. In fact, in both my mock drafts, I had him going another direction. But Bond was definitely on my radar, and for him to fall to the third round, it was absolutely thrilling. And that makes the Saints linebacking for a potential team strength if. Just like we questioned with the left side of the offensive line, if Anzalone and Alonso both stay healthy. Listen, I agree with you. I love the versatility that Craig Robertson brings, and he is a high quality spot starter. But for Robertson to play any of those linebacking positions for long term, you're making the position into a little bit of a weakness. And I know that the coaches love Caden Ellis, and late in the preseason, I could see why. But Ellis is not the athlete that Anzalone is. He's not even the
Mhm.
athlete that Alonso is. I think Caden Ellis does have a future with this team and definitely in the NFL. But yeah, he doesn't have the athleticism or the versatility that Alex Anzalone and certainly Demario Davis is going to bring to you. So if Anzalone does go down again, like you said, that not only thins out the Saints linebacking core, that limits the position as a whole on what they could do, and it also probably would, if it would happen, knock on wood, early on, like Anzalone's injuries have happened in 2 of his 3 years. Bond is going to be pressed into the full-time duties that he's maybe not ready to take on quite yet.
Right. Exactly. That is a concern. And this is things that Sean and I have been talking about the past couple of weeks with the COVID issue, not having OTAs and mini camps and the in classroom teaching of the offense and the defense. It's so hard to get people who are unfamiliar with your system up to speed, especially young players, up to speed to useful players. That's why I think you see the Saints bringing back so many players that they had on the roster before, the Austin Carrs, the PJ Williams, and so forth. So getting that linebacker, it would be hard to get a linebacker off the street or out of free agency to come in and learn the offense, to keep it, learn the defense, to really come in as a starter.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I have been saying to anybody who would listen this offseason, the same exact things that you echoed. Listen, teams that had a massive turnover in free agency, those teams I wouldn't expect to get off to a quick start at all, because you don't have the mini camps. You don't have the OTAs. Your rookies that you drafted and invested so highly in that you expect to be immediate starters. Hedge those bets a little bit, because a rookie is always going to be a rookie, but they're not going to have that extra work, hands-on work, that any football player needs. And it's going to affect certain teams, and that's why I'm like you. I love what the Saints did in free agency, and focusing on keeping a talented core, by the way, that's gone 11-5, 13-3, and 13-3 over the last 3 years. So that's a pretty talented core to shoot for keeping together. And even you swapped Von Bell, and who'd you get for him? Malcolm Jenkins. Jenkins knows Sean Payton and Dennis Allen like the back of his hand, and the other way around. So again, you bring in a player that knows your system well. While I expect the Saints to maybe address, probably the defensive side of the ball with maybe another late free agent signing, they have their core intact, and they've had a very concrete plan going forward. I think that gives New Orleans a distinct advantage over these other teams that had a big free agent turnover, or that need their first and second round draft choices to play right away. Where the Saints, their first round choice, again, Ruiz, a little bit easier for an offensive lineman to do that than, say, a rookie quarterback, a rookie defensive back, or a rookie linebacker.
Exactly. And then the teams that have new head coaches, and they even a veteran head coach like the Washington Redskins with Ron Rivera. These players are trying to learn their system remotely via this, and they're having virtual practices. They're not actually going out there and learning this stuff. And I know people are saying, well, hell, before the OTAs existed and all that stuff, you had back in the 70s and the 80s, before football became a 24/7 kind of job, people took off seasons and they did other jobs. Archie Manning used to sell cars, that kind of stuff. They can go back to that again. Well, no, because the offenses and defenses are so much more complicated now. Archie Manning said one time when he was talking to his son, He said, when I was a quarterback, we had to learn basically 5 or 6 defenses. That's all we had to learn. Substitution was unheard of. Um, Late in his career, yeah, you got Nick. You had the 5 defensive backs, but you didn't get the dime packages. You didn't get the exotic blitzes. You didn't get those kind of things. You watch an old game, and the blitz is coming because it got 8 guys at the line of scrimmage, and maybe one guy will drop back off in coverage, but that's basically what they did. It was coming. Your job was to pick it up or not, and receivers ran very simplistic routes. All that stuff is gone now, and it's because of the OTAs and having more opportunities to do more wrinkles with things. So to me, if I'm a Carolina Panthers fan, for example, I'm expecting probably an 0-5, 0-6 start. Not a knock on their talent, not a knock on their coaching, just because that's going to kind of be their preseason. The off season is going to be the preseason. And the preseason is going to be the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. I can see that, and Tom Brady, I'm kind of glad we're playing Tom Brady week 1.
Same.
Because he's not going to have his timing down with his receivers. It's not to say he's going to suck, but it's you're not going to get a week 1 Bill Belichick ready offense with Tom Brady. You're just not going to get that. You're getting a guy who is learning an offense that's very different from the Ron Earhart offense that he learned and has been running for 15 years or 20 years over there in New England.
Yeah, and it's going to show early on. Like you said, Brady, who I think is on a steep decline anyway, and has been over the last 2 years.
Absolutely,
he was partially protected by that offense. He isn't going to be now. Bruce Arians, Tampa's head coach, he's no fool. He's not going to expect that this is the Tom Brady from 8 or 10 years ago that's going to wing it down the field either. So he is going to adjust his offense on the fly. But you still have downfield weapons like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard. If you don't use them to some extent in that capacity, then you're undershorting you're cutting off your nose to spite your face in a way. So I'm interested to see how this Brady-led offense is going to pan out. But I wasn't, if I'm thinking the way I think, if I'm a Tampa Bay fan, I wouldn't be jumping for joy at the signing of Tom Brady. I'm a Tampa Bay opponent. I'm not necessarily biting my fingers down to the nub at Tampa Bay signing at Tom Brady either.
Well, since Jameis Winston's joined this offense, I've been doing a lot of research from Tampa websites and sports football analysis people explaining why Winston threw 30 interceptions. And part of the reasoning they give for Winston throwing 30 interceptions is Bruce Arians' system, that regardless of the quarterback, and we're going to Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, and Carson Palmer, they saw an uptick in their interception percentage because Arians' system is very reminiscent of the old run and shoot that I remember, where the receivers can make the decision on how to break off the route at the top of the route. And why that's a problem is because the receiver and the quarterback have to be on the same page. If I have an option route, and what I mean by option route is I have multiple ways I can take this based on what I see on the defense, because the receiver's reading the defense too. If on an option route, I can either curl it back in, take it to the left, take it to the right, sideline, or middle of the field, I can make that decision based on how the defensive back is playing me and how I see the defense playing. The quarterback has to see the exact same thing I see. Otherwise, he's going to throw the ball, and Brady's been used to a timing-based offense. He's going to throw the ball where he thinks I'm going to be, and I may not be there. I may decide instead of taking it to the sideline, I may end up cutting to the inside because The defensive back I'm playing is giving up the inside, thinking he's going to have help over the top. I don't see that the safety's paying attention. I can cut inside and get in the hole in the zone, but Brady doesn't see that. Brady throws to the outside, perfect interception. It's a six points the other way. So I think you're going to see that. And I think Tampa Bay fans are going to lose their shit when that happens, because there's going to be like, well, what did we get rid of Winston for? We could have Winston for this, So and Winston has turnover problems to begin with. He has coverage. He has problems reading coverages. When they adjust, I saw a great thing. I'm gonna have to post this on Bayou Blitz and Under the Dome, talking about Winston's issues with turnovers. But Winston has problems when defenses show one thing and change their coverage. Like say they show cover 3, but shift to cover 2, or man under, or some sort of coverage issue. Winston has problems with that because he's going to go and do what he thought he was seeing, and that led to interceptions too. So I mean, I bring all that up because Arian system with Tom Brady and no training camp or no off-season activities, trying to learn and get your timing down in training camp will be a big challenge. And that really is exciting for me, because I want to play Brady early and humiliate him early and give Tampa fans that cold ice bucket of water to the face that, no, you're not going to the Super Bowl. You're probably going to be like Cleveland from last year.
I feel the same way. Tampa has loads of offensive talent at the skill positions. Not much has changed along the offensive line, which is another reason why Winston turned the ball over, was because they couldn't protect him. Any quarterback that's under the kind of pressure, under constant pressure, is going to turn the ball over more. I don't care who you are. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Drew Brees or a Jameis Winston. You're just going to turn the ball over more if you're under heavy duress. So Tampa has to prove to me that they'll be able to protect the passer. And we'll wait and see. And again, they did bring some offensive linemen and addressed the position, with earlier draft picks. The Buccaneers did. But what's the most important thing along the offensive line, Alan? And I'm not. It is rhetorical. I know you know the answer. It's cohesion. They don't have they're not going to have the cohesion in game 1 of the NFL season. They're just not.
No, that's exactly it. So that leads to the final question I have for you this evening. The Saints have been graded highly for the undrafted free agents they brought in. How do you see these undrafted free agent players maybe making this roster or not? Because we've talked about the issues that they have, and it's really unfair to them because they're not going to get the opportunities to, it's going to be tough in training camp for the competition. So how do you see these guys playing out? Are there any players that you're like, okay, I'm going to still watch him, even though it's going to be a challenge?
I'm like you. I do feel for these players because I could see why so many publications graded the undrafted free agents that the Saints brought in so highly. Because when I broke them down, as soon as I could after the draft, I liked a lot of them the most. I like most of them a lot. Excuse me. But they're going to have an uphill climb to make a very talented and deep roster in the first place, and now extremely limited opportunities to do it. One kid I really, really like is Juwan Johnson, the receiver from Oregon. I got to watch him up close and personal at Penn State. And he had some drop problems, kind of fell into James Franklin's doghouse, plus Johnson's physical stature didn't fit what Franklin wants to do with his receivers at Penn State. KJ Hamler is the perfect example of what Franklin prefers in his receivers. He prefers a smaller jitterbug type. Johnson is 6'4", 230. Matter of fact, I suggested and read somewhere else that Johnson plays like a pass-catching tight end if he could pack on a few pounds. So that kind of versatility could be a potential in for open another door for him for an NFL future. But at 6'4", 230, runs a sub 4.6. So he's a bigger, more athletic kind of guy that Peyton loves. Johnson seemed to overcome his pass catching issues at Oregon last year, where after he transferred from Penn State. And as long as he can prove that he can hold on to the football, he runs the kind of routes that impresses you as a big man with the athleticism to still get down the field. So I like Johnson, and the Saints, outside of Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, in my opinion, every other receiving spot is up for grabs. Deontay Harris obviously has a roster spot cemented because of his return skills. And I'm hoping and thinking that Harris will be used more of an offensive weapon this year. But Emmanuel, Butler, Lil Jordan, Humphrey, et cetera, those guys have a full year in the system, which certainly gives them the advantage. But they're also not, they're also on a shaky pedestal, as is Traquan Smith. I'm not going to make the prediction that Traquan will not make the team, but if a couple of these guys really step it up, all of a sudden, a disappointing Traquan Smith becomes a little bit shaky, and Juwan Johnson or Marquez Callaway, the deep threat from Tennessee, Mike Detillier loves Marquez Callaway.
I do too. And it's not just because he played at Tennessee. I really like the size of this kid. I think he is definitely a challenge to Lil Jordan Humphreys for a roster spot. And I can see him beating that man out because, we had the Emmanuel Butler, Lil Jordan Humphreys issue last year where Butler looked great in practice, but when it came game time, he was not very tough over the middle, dropped a lot of passes. Whereas in practice, Lil Jordan Humphreys was totally unimpressive, but he turned it on for the games and he made the roster. Well, he got pulled up from the practice squad while Butler stayed in the practice squad the whole time. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Callaway and seeing what he can do to this offense, because one thing I've noticed outside of Deontay Harris, I noticed that the Saints are bringing in a lot more physical receivers than what they've done in the past. And I think that goes hand in hand with blocking downfield and getting receivers who are willing to go over the middle and take the hit just to move the chains. Possession type of receivers, more so than the speed guys that we've seen in the past, which is weird because we're talking about the offensive line being speed guys, but the receivers being slower but stronger, more physical guys. So it's an unusual combination for me.
It is, and I'm like you. I'm interested to see how it's going to play out. But yeah, I mean, as football players, I give both Callaway and Johnson a real puncher's chance to beat out at least or move ahead of Lil Jordan Humphrey and Emmanuel Butler, because all four players are bigger guys. But Callaway and Johnson have the athleticism, in my opinion, that Butler and Humphrey lack, which gives you a down the field option. Both Callaway has to sharpen his routes. Johnson has to prove that he can hold on to the ball in traffic. So those are both two big things that these players are going to have to overcome. But the receiver battle is going to be really interesting, throughout preseason. Another guy I really love and I think he's going to have a real uphill battle to make the team, the running back out of Notre Dame, Tony Jones Jr.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about how the Saints need to be more effective running the ball between the tackles, and obviously the offensive line has something to do with that. But Jones is your between the tackle thumper. He's not much of a receiver out of the backfield, but I'll tell you where he will be an asset to the passing game is he's great at blitz pickup. Not only is he willing to stick his nose in there and get dirty, he has nice vision to pick up the free rusher, and then the athleticism to get over there and get it. Jones will have to earn his bones on special teams, which is fine by him, his mentality, because he did play special teams earlier at Notre Dame. But that Saints running back room is awful crowded, for Jones to be able to crack the active roster. He has practice squad written all over him.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I have nicked Latavius Murray on a lot is his blitz pickup and pass blocking. And I think that's part of the reason why Peyton didn't use him very much or enough for fans' taste, because he's kind of like the guy, okay, we're going to run the ball. Everybody knows we're going to run the ball because Murray's in there now. Whereas, with a guy like Kamara or, when Mark Ingram was here, their pass blocking skills were good enough that they could run or pass out of that formation. You definitely saw that. That's what made Pierre Thomas such a stud for the Saints for so long, was his versatility. Last year, or 2 years ago, Taylor Stallworth made the roster as an undrafted defensive lineman. Last year, the man, the legend, Shy Tuttle, with the greatest play, arguably, in Saints Falcons history, right up there with the block punt by oh, good God, I can't believe I'm just having a blank on his name, but 37, Steve Gleason, the stiff arm, which will go down, especially the German play-by-play on that game, will go down in Saints history. Do you see a defensive lineman of the players that they brought in undrafted possibly making this roster?
It's certainly possible. But again, if someone put a gun to my head and asked me whether I would place money on it or not, I wouldn't. I like Malcolm Roach as a player. He was so often used out of position at Texas. 6'2", 297, and they were playing him on the edge most of the time, and a stand-up linebacker other times.
Holy cow!
And he has decent straight-ahead speed in the open field, but that didn't take advantage at all about what he's best at. And he does have good strength at the point of attack. He sets a good base and is difficult to move off point, which of course are two great things you want out of defensive tackles. But I think that defensive tackle position, assuming that they all stay healthy and don't regress, the second year with Shy Tuttle, third year for Taylor Stallworth, Roach is going to have one heck of a time beating out those guys. He might be able to nip out Taylor Stallworth. I think Tuttle is a budding star. I know the play against Atlanta, made rightfully so every highlight reel and the Saints highlight reel for life. But Tuttle is a football player. He is too much for one blocker to handle single-handedly. And it showed more pass rushing ability, Tuttle did, than what I anticipated. So Roach is really going to have to wow coaches to stick around on the practice or to stick around on the active roster. I don't rule it out, but he has an uphill climb. And Gus Cumberlander, the edge that they got out of Oregon, he looks the part. He's 6'7", 256. There's so little film on him out of Oregon because he was just hurt all the time. And just like with the tackle position, the Saints defensive ends, Cumberlander is going to have to make an immediate impact as a pass rusher, which is something that every team craves more of. So the bet's still out on him. I did watch film and break down on Malcolm Roach. Like I said, on Cumberlander, there just wasn't a lot for me to find, so I can tell you very little about him.
Yeah, I was trying to find the kid that was in jail for a while, but then he came back and they saved a spot for him basically on the active roster last year. They liked him a lot, and he did get a sack last year. And you also have Noah Spence, the former Tampa Bay defensive end. He's kind of a tweener. I think he's going to. He didn't play. He was on the team last year. Hardly played. Ganderson, yes, thank you, Granderson. I couldn't remember his name, but I did know about him. But I don't know if Noah Spence, how he fits in on this team or not. How they're going to use him. Are they going to try and use him as a defensive end? Are they going to try and use him as maybe a linebacker to rotate in as a blitzing linebacker? I don't know. But I think that's the other challenge you have for these undrafted guys, to find a spot. Who do I have to beat out to get a spot on this roster? and the veterans kind of have a leg up. But that's a crowded room too. So I'm not sure when any of that fits in. Offensive line, I know we brought in a kid from LSU, and we have a couple other players that we brought in, a kid from Utah, and people like that. But again, where do they fit in? I think the third tackle spot is still open.
Yeah.
But the interior guys really have an uphill climb. I just cannot see them unseating Will Clapp, Cameron Tom. I know Nick Easton, he's got a contract that's tough to swallow for a backup guy, but he has experience in your system, and you have to keep in mind that Pete and Armstead both have an injury history, so you kind of want to keep a guy that can play those spots. There's some questions on who can make this roster, who can beat the players that are already here.
Yeah, and with limited opportunities to do it. I'm like you, I love Throckmorton, McGee, Paolo, and Steckler, all four linemen that you mentioned. And each of them are versatile enough to play multiple positions. So that in itself, assuming they play well, obviously, that in itself gives them a fighting chance. But please, like you said, you're protecting a 41-year-old quarterback. You need to have a 41-year-old quarterback with two offensive linemen up front with injury histories and another rookie. I have mentioned on multiple occasions that Nick Easton's spot could be on the bubble and a potential salary cap cut. But at the same time, for the reasons you mentioned, I don't necessarily see it happening.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think that they're going to wave goodbye to Easton or any of their other veteran linemen before the start of training camp. Because that would be foolhardy, because you need the experienced depth back there. Could a Throckmorton or an Adrian McGee or Darren Paulo or Jordan Steckler unseat maybe a Will Clapp or a Cameron Tom? That's more likely. And the Saints have always done a great job of stashing talented offensive linemen on the practice squad. But I think that's going to be the more likely scenario. The position that could be up for grabs, but at the same time, we so very rarely see an undrafted rookie make an impact, is cornerback. I absolutely love Keith Washington. We had an opportunity to interview him, actually. Keith Washington from West Virginia and Tino Ellis from Maryland. Both players are outstanding athletes. That I love their aggressiveness and man coverage. Washington is a little bit bigger guy, 6 foot 180, and Washington also has terrific off the ball skills. Almost reminds you of a free safety, the type of range that he shows in zone. Again, not that you want a rookie undrafted cornerback to go up against the Mike Evans and Chris Godwins and Julio Jones of the world, but this is the one spot on the Saints roster where the depth concerns me. Behind Marshawn Lattimore and Janoris Jenkins, how could you not be terrified? And that's where I'm not saying that a Keith Washington or a Tino Ellis will be able to knock off a PJ Williams, but they'll have opportunities where if Patrick Robinson, for instance, continues to struggle in coverage, and these guys will step up in preseason and play well on special teams too, which is where Justin Hardy has earned his bones. You could see a Washington or an Ellis stick on the back half of the roster.
Okay, so I had a question, and I'm forgive me, I don't remember his name. Who was the cornerback we signed from the XFL?
Dietrich Nichols, who I'm also pretty high on.
Okay. How do you view him?
Dietrich's a little bit smaller. He listed at about 5'10", but he does have a little bit of NFL experience. He was on the Arizona Cardinals practice squad for a year before signing on with the XFL. Dietrich is a really aggressive man-to-man coverage guy that is capable of taking on a guy either outside or in the slot. His disadvantage is going to be his height. Because we know the bigger receivers, the Mike Evans, the Chris Godwins, Julio Jones, and even DJ Moore, people don't realize that he's a bigger, he's not just a little Smurf type of receiver.
Right.
That's where Nichols is going to have to show that he can win those battles more often than he loses them. But I'm really excited. I think Dietrich Nichols has a real good shot, to be among those top 4, 5 cornerbacks if they keep him.
Yeah. And again, that goes back to the thing we talked about earlier, why PJ Williams and Patrick Robinson are still on the team. Again, that experience. But yeah, I like a lot of the undrafted corners. I really thought they were going to address the cornerback position in the draft. The draft just didn't fall that way. It is what it is. I don't. A lot of people have been freaking out when I've suggested this, but I can see a reunion with Eli Apple sometime. Not as a knock on these young kids, but just again, a guy who knows your defense. You know what he can do, and that you mentioned earlier, the fear of the lack of depth behind on the outside behind Jenkins and Lattimore. You're going to need somebody like an Eli Apple who's played in your defense before to do that.
Yeah, and played well. I've been screaming for them to bring back Eli Apple. We don't know what his financial demands specifically are. The contract offer he had signed with the Oakland Raiders, I believe, was for about $6, maybe $7 million a year. The Saints could swing that kind of deal, but I'm sure that they would prefer not to. But yeah, again, Eli Apple has played well in this system, for almost a year and a half before his knee and confidence got wrecked. It seemed like at the same time last year, and he just wasn't the same player down the stretch. But again, you think Eli Apple would have made a difference in that Minnesota playoff game? Maybe, maybe not. But I sure as hell would have had him. Would have rather had him. In coverage responsibilities than Patrick Robinson or Eli Apple on Kyle Rudolph on the final touchdown of the game.
Right. Exactly. So, that's why I said the possibility of a reunion is very likely. People throw out names like Logan Ryan. They throw out names like Everson Griffin, Jadeveon Clowney. We've talked about this with Sean in the past, and I just don't see the Saints going for any of those guys because A, the money demands are going to be too great, and B, there's stuff that I just keep hammering this point home. Not having the time, even though they're veteran players, not having the time with these guys to, learn the defense to become an impactful player. That's a lot of money to put out for a guy that may only take a handful of snaps. It's just it doesn't make any sense. You've got to have inexpensive core. Let me back this up. You got to have an inexpensive depth to support your expensive core.
Folks, I don't know where Alan went. I'm sure he'll be back on. I don't know if I froze on the live feed, but I do want to take the time to thank everybody for not only tuning in tonight, but supporting the work at Under the Dome, and those of you that follow us at the Bayou Blitz and SI.com too. Speaking for Alan and the hooky playing Sean tonight, I know that they both have so much love for all the support that you guys give them. I know I have love not only for you guys that support us, but for Alan and Sean too, and everything that they do.
I think I'm back now. I don't know what happened there. I've had this problem before. Yeah, I've had this problem before. I'll get a hiccup in my internet connection, and that's all it takes. But it seems to be okay now. Bob, let's go. We've been on for a while, over an hour. So I know it's the East Coast time for you. Um, where can people find you on social media?
And I was just thanking everybody a minute ago, for not only tuning in, to you and Sean weekly, but everything that we do too. But I can be followed on social media on Facebook. Just look for Bob Rose, and Twitter at Bobby R2613. I do post my articles on my personal page, but you can follow my work directly at si.com and the Saints News Network. And please help a brother out. We're getting an ear beating that we're not getting enough individual follows on the si.com site. So just go to si.com and look up New Orleans Saints. You can follow myself, Kyle Mosley, John Hendricks, a cast of thousands. Obviously, it's free. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask y'all to do it. But I so really do appreciate all the love that you give all of us. Alan, myself, Sean, Kyle, I could go on and on and on. But the work that we do means so much extra because of the support that you give us. So that means the world, and I thank you for that.
And you also have your own show, your own podcast that you host, the Bayou Blitz. I don't know what your schedule's like for the off season, but how you guys? I know it comes on normally Wednesday nights. So, and last week y'all had Mo Hill on. Regrettably, I've not had an opportunity to listen to it. I've been meaning to take time to listen to it. But tell everybody about how to follow you in the Bayou Blitz.
Yeah, and well, first of all, we do have a Bayou Blitz Facebook page and Facebook group, just like Under the Dome has. So please, folks, follow both of us, Under the Dome and Bayou Blitz. As far as the Bayou Blitz podcast, you can, it is every Wednesday night. I'm sure we'll take a couple Wednesdays off during the off season, but we do have a couple fun projects in mind. Zeroing in on a couple more of these Saints rookies that we've been talking about. We did have Keith Washington a couple of weeks back, and we're going to bring in other former players as well. All of know Quinn Early and Jim Everett, repeat guests of ours, but we did have Lonzo Hill last week, and he was loads of fun. But you can tune into the Bayou Blitz podcast either through our live Facebook feed, or subscribe to Bayou Blitz or Saints News Network on YouTube. And you can, just like your format here at Under the Dome, you can tune into the live feed and make comments and ask questions there. Or if you miss the live feed, you can go back and listen to or look at the past shows.
Yep. Lonzo Hill will tell you, Mo Hill will tell you that he was the original number 87 and Joe Horn just borrowed his number. So that was the old Dome Patrol days. Mo Hill came in 1988, I believe. So
was the best year. He came on in 87, 88, and 89. He put up really nice numbers though.
Right. Exactly. So I remember him well. Anyway, yes. So that's Bob Rose. You can find him on the Bayou Blitz. That'll be tomorrow night. Check the Facebook page. Kyle's very good about putting the updated stuff. Go dig out his archives. The interview with Jim Everett was fantastic. It really was. Jim, I'd love to get Jim on this show. And we got to do that one day. You had Mike Detillier a couple weeks ago as well, right after the draft. And, Mike Detillier, another one of my personal favorites. Tremendous wealth of information. And if you don't have Bobby Hebert in there messing up all the questions, you really get a lot of good stuff out of Mike Detillier. He really needs to write a book on Buddy D'Alberto, because he's got a ton of stories. I repeat some of them, but I could listen to Mike talk all day long. Sean will be back next week. Hopefully he's got his stuff straightened out. Last week, I know we had a tough time with all the conversation going on while he was trying to do the show from his place of work business. But he will be back next week. Thank you again, Bob, for joining us. And thank all you guys for participating. Lionel, you're a new guy. I haven't seen you on here before, but I'm glad you found us tonight. find us on Under the Dome. I'm on Twitter at 79 Saints. I'm on Facebook. I do some writing for fun. I might start doing some stuff. I don't know how all this quarantine stuff's going to play out much longer, but I might post some stuff over the summer, especially if it looks like football season is going to be delayed, some Saints history stuff. But in the meantime, thank you guys. Join us Under the Dome. We'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.